We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. Through the unknown remembered gate, when the last of earth left to discover.
Welcome back, everyone. We're here for another episode of Suburban Tongue, and I'm talking to Catherine Davis. She was my director in 12th grade in high school. We did Shakespeare 12th night together, and I got to assist and direct with her. And so whenever I first started this podcast, I knew that I wanted to get her on just to kind of like talk about theater, to talk about her work, and all that fun stuff. So I think kind of the first thing that we can talk about, since it's very fitting, especially for the space that we're in right now, is when did you know that theater was the thing that you wanted to go for?
That's a good question. So I'd say growing up, I was I didn't really do very much theater in high school or anything, but I was always kind of the ham of the group, mm-hmm. My group of friends, and always very. I told a good story. I had a lot of expressions and I liked making people laugh and everything. And I would say even like in high school, do the musicals, sure. And I didn't get cast in a show and like a play, a proper play until I was a senior. Mm-hmm. So we did a play called The Hollywood Hillbillies by Tim Kelly. So maybe not one for the record books, but it was fun. It was a good way to get my feet wet. So I'd say that's kind of where the bug took hold for the most part, as far as like, oh, wow, this is really fun. But it wasn't until college when I was my sophomore year of college, I played Hamlet in Hamlet. Yeah. And that was, a massive undertaking for me. As a young actor, but I think that was when I really was like, oh no, like I'm much better at this than what I thought I wanted to go to school for. Mm-hmm. So,
what did you originally want to go to school for?
Early British literature. I wanted to be an armchair scholar and really focus on,
That explains the Chaucer's tales whenever you like have the whole thing memorized.
Yeah, first 27 lines of Canterbury tales, right? So, yeah, I still have that. I'll have that memorized. I'll be like, full on dementia when I'm like 95, and that's the one thing I'll be able to remember. But so I have a great love of that, and thought that was kind of the direction I wanted to go, is kind of be an English professor and really teach. I've always wanted to be a teacher. Mm-hmm. I think even when I kind of made a shift into theater and theater arts, my goal was never to be like on Broadway or to be on, in the movies or anything like that. I love performance. I'll always perform, but for me, I love theater education. I love seeing people move past themselves and learn empathy for others and learn storytelling and, helping people get past their own obstacles, what stands in their way from being, better than themselves in a way. So, so for me, that's kind of where it morphed into was, I want to move from English education to theater education, really.
So when you are directing a play, kind of how do you go about breaking people out of that shell that they might be coming in with?
So I think I don't try to come in with any preconceived notions about people, right? I think that's one of the great things about theater is it really kind of teaches you not to judge others and teaches you not to be anything but what you are in a moment. And you go to the idea that we act every day, right? And so that about people. That, I'm going to present you a certain part of myself. I'm going to present a different part of myself to my parents or to my best friends or to people I don't know, complete strangers. Everybody gets a different version of me. Mm-hmm. And so I think what I try to do when I'm watching a scene happen, I look for moments. We layer a moment, right? We try to encourage people to, see the scene for what it is and to act in the moment. And so when that doesn't happen, there's usually a few things that could be in play. They don't understand the scene, or they don't understand the character's objective, or what what's standing in the character's way, or they don't understand the character's given circumstances, or they have their own baggage that they're not willing to let go of in order to arrive at a moment. I always heard one of my directors in grad school, Lori, said a good director can come in and say a single word to you, and you will know exactly what to do. I usually use more than one word, but I try to, encourage that. I don't want to say, I don't want to give a line reading and say, do it this way and say it exactly this way. What I want to do is present them with the character's truth in that moment, if they don't already know that, and then help them to make whatever adjustments they need to get to that moment. So it just all depends, I guess, on, this is the long answer, but how do you get them there? You help them to, you have to sort out what they're missing. Yeah. Once you do that, especially if it's a block, right? If there's an emotional block, or they can't relate to a certain aspect of that character's personality, you try to bring it back to, well, what can they relate to? What shared experience do you have with that character in that moment that you can pull from? I think the cautionary tale is that theater can be toxic, right? I came out of a tradition where, whatever the director says is right. Don't question that. And you have to put yourself through a lot of, baggage and bad things to sometimes get to a moment at your own peril, at your own, at the cost of your own mental health sometimes. I don't prescribe to that myself. There are other ways of arriving at a scene or a moment. So I really try to use different types of acting theory to help my actors find their moments without forcing them through trauma, forcing them to relive trauma. And there are, some people would disagree with me on that. I think, but it depends on the person, right? Are you prepared to face that? I can't make that decision for you, and I'm not going to force you through a moment that you're not ready to face. And so there's that. But there are psychological methodologies, and then there are more external methodologies. I like to use kind of a combination platter of those to really help. We do it through acting exercises or through working scenes in different ways, but always trying to push, right? You set high expectations for your students. You set high expectations for yourself, knowing that they might not always be risen to, but everybody, if I don't set that high expectation from my crew, and this too, having worked on Twelfth Night, it wasn't enough to just do Shakespeare, right? And to put them through that. No, we needed to add a band, and we needed to do music, and we needed
to be Beatles.
And it needed to be live, and it needed to be all these things. Because I like atmosphere. I like making sure that we're creating a world for these characters to live, not just and I want their experience to be full and complete, because their characters need to be, because of the expectations I've set for them. And so that's what I was trying to bring forward.
I do really like that. Because as I write, scripts and think of how would I direct this to somebody, I think something that I've always kind of had in my head is that conflict between do you take, your approach to it, or do you take the more, you kind of force a more method acting onto the actors? Because I know that there is there's famous examples, Kubrick did that to people, and he completely just destroyed people, but then he had great movies come out of it.
Got great moments, right? You can't argue with that.
It's kind of scary, because it's you look at what he was able to get out of his actors, and you're like, well, would he have been able to do that if he would have been a nicer, a more easy person to work with? And so the art there is finding that good balance. But I like the idea of what you were saying about how we all are acting all the time, and so it's kind of being a good actor is just implementing that character into the character that you're always kind of portraying. Because I mean, you're a different person for everybody. I mean, all the world's a stage. You know?
Right, exactly. And I think, what does my character need from me? And that's what I want to give them, And how do I connect to this person, and how do I care for this person and tell their story the best way that I can? And that doesn't mean it has to be at the detriment of your own core being, right? It's just.
And I mean, like with someone like Shakespeare too, I think that's why he's so easy to, well, not easy, but like, you know what I mean, like to adapt his characters to the to theater, because like, someone like Hamlet, we can all, no matter who you are, whether you're like a man, a woman, old, young, whatever, anyone can see themselves in Hamlet, because like we've all had, his sort of experience with, as of late, I've lost all my mirth. Like, we
doubt ourselves, right? Like,
and
we
so,
doubt ourselves all the time.
Yeah.
And can you rise to the challenge? Can you be the person that you need to be? And understanding that truly lost sense of being, and finding that again. I mean, it's a universal truth, right? We all feel lost and unworthy, unable to, complete a task or do a thing. And we can all definitely relate to that, But then how do you relate to somebody who is a nightmare of a human being?
Yeah.
And commit to that fully and tell that story to the best of your ability, knowing that it needs to present itself. I mean, even with so we just did She Kills Monsters, right? And there's some characters in there. There's some moments in there because it deals with a girl's childhood experience, and it's a reflection on some of that. And how do you, some of the girls had to play like these girl bullies, and they said terrible things, and made fun of her and knocked her over and kicked her, and and just were as absolutely brutal as they could be. It was really hard for the girls playing those characters to do that, even though it was in a kind of a fun atmosphere and in a very over the top fantasy kind of realm. I mean, the reality of that situation was very, very real, and they they had to really commit to that, or else if they don't tell that side of the story, this side of the story ceases to have the urgency and the level of importance.
You have to have the lightness and the darkness there.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think kind of like, with that idea of the directing with the theater, how do you go about finding like which stories, when it's your time to like pick, what are we gonna do next? I mean, beyond just like what are we able to put on, but like how do you choose which stories you think the people who you have are gonna be able to tackle the best?
I always think what's gonna push them next. I mean, I think we've done. I'll say this, it's very nice, because there's a couple different answers, I think, here, but you're working with high schools, right? You try to look at where you've been and what you haven't done in a while, and like, okay, so we haven't done this kind of show or that kind of show. We hadn't done Shakespeare, so it was like, well, I think we need to tackle that one a little bit, because they need to, and so we did, and it was a year of language and poetry, and I mean, it's always the funny thing about Shakespeare is always that he's never as highbrow as you expect him to be.
Oh,
there are a lot
not.
of like.
That was my favorite part about us doing Shakespeare, was just completely finding out how much of
he's so dirty.
and every man Shakespeare was making all the jokes that we make all the time. And
exactly.
And everyone only thinks like that he's the to be or not to be.
Oh, he's very high art, and you're like, he is not.
No.
He's making fart jokes and sex jokes all the time.
Yeah, like the first scene of Romeo and Juliet is just like you can't read that and not think that he was just smirking in his house the whole time.
He's being nasty. But that's what you need to be able to uncover that stuff. You need, and so you really think about, okay, what's going to help them grow? What's going to help this group grow? And when I'm doing my own plays outside of educational theater, I like to push the audience a little bit. I will say that I tend to choose. There are different types of people in the theater. I think there are those who just really like to focus on the entertainment of things, but then you have people who really like to challenge their audience and make them make them suffer, make them suffer through a moment with you. I really like absurdist theater. I've done a lot of Beckett. I've done, not that I've ever done anything by Artaud, but the theater of cruelty, all of that stuff that, forces the audience to participate in some capacity, and engage. You watch those fourth wall kinds of plays, like where the audience is just supposed to sit back, see something that feels very much akin to their own lives, very reflective, funny, entertaining. I go out to dinner with my friends and we talk about how great the play was, and there's a great place for that. I like the ones that you get to the end of the show and you say, I think I just want to go home. And I've done those plays too. Say my favorite playwright is probably Bertolt Brecht. I've only ever done Caucasian Chalk Circle, but I would do it every year, all the time. And he's really big on, he doesn't let his actors experience emotion. They're very, very action driven. So he writes these epic plays that take place over a long period of time and showcase different, scenes and elements. And you see the action driven, but anytime there's an emotional component that needs to be expressed, he gives it to somebody else. He gives it to a songwriter, or he gives it to, people who are the narrators who are outside the scope of the show. He doesn't want a realistic looking set. He wants everything exposed. He wants the black curtains pulled up and, watch the actors coming in and off the stage, right? Because it's not just an escape. It's a challenge to an audience member to sit there and to consider the concepts and to consider the story in a more participatory way. And I think that's really important. I love that. I love, I'll give you an example. So I was doing a play called Not I. It's by Samuel Beckett. It's a mouth. That's all the play is. It's this mouth, and the actress who does it is in complete darkness, except there's a pin spot just on the lips.
Is that where Rocky Horror Picture got it from? Do you know?
I don't think so.
No.
They
weren't classy enough for that.
Well, no, it's just a different.
Oh, okay.
It's a different beast.
I see what you mean.
But the idea is that it's just this mouth going, and they're going. They speak a mile a minute. It's just fast, and as an actor, your goal is to get through it, honestly, and that's. I think the fastest it's ever been done is in the 9-minute mark. I think I did it in about 11. It's sizable. When it was originally done, Jessica Tandy did it. When it first came out on Broadway, I think it took her 18 minutes to get through it.
Okay.
And I think she couldn't memorize it because it's really difficult.
Yeah.
It took me 3 months to memorize, and which is good because I gave myself that amount of time to get it done. And literally for me, it was like I say, 10 and a half, 11 minutes, or I'm just going. And I get to the end, the light comes down, and I hear this woman in the front row just go, thank God it's over. And I was like, exactly.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. But that's
the point.
The intensity of that show. And, you're trying as an audience member to hear the words, and there's the word, every word has value in this, but it's more about the experience. Because again, she's just talking above a whisper until she gets to this build-up point, and then she screams, silence, and then the mouth starts back up again. And so that is intense, and that's the kind of stuff I don't always want the audience to go home feeling like, well, I just had the best night.
Yeah.
I kind of want sometimes for people to go home and be like, my mind is melted, my brain is rocked. I need to do something.
I have to seriously reconsider things.
Yeah.
That's something I've thought about a lot recently. Especially, I revisited the art museum in Pittsburgh, the Carnegie one.
Oh, sure.
And every time I go
That's a great
there,
one.
I love how they have it split between. I think most museums would do it this way, but how they have it split between the older, more traditional art, and then there's the section with the big white walls, big white ceiling floor with
Yeah.
all of the modern, more abstract art. And I think I don't know if I think this way because I'm coming in trying to like, I don't know, think in a different sort of way, but I've always kind of wondered why, especially with art, like if there's a way that people could see that. I think what modern art, especially with like, you know, and these more like avant-garde styles for theater and things, are what they're going for is something that has always been being went for, like with theater and with art. And I think now, I don't know, because I don't know if this is like a trend that people have like kind of dissected more. If you have something that you could like a thought on it, but you know, with a play like, you know, where it's just a mouth, you know, it's doing that to call attention to that thing. It's like, this is the only thing you're going to look at, and this is, you know, this is what the whole play is going to be. Or like with a play where you can see all the behind the scenes things as the play's going on. Right. You know, and those are trying to call to mind that you're sitting there watching something. Like it's not like you're getting
it's
absorbed
commenting on
into
itself.
it.
It's very meta, yes.
And but like at the same time, like whenever you move back to something like more traditional, like someone like Shakespeare or someone older than that, or even newer than that, kind of like in those stages. I mean, they were sort of doing the same thing, but on a different level. I think where they. Or maybe I'm reading a modern lens into that, where it's like someone like Shakespeare is kind of like he's calling to attention, like with something like Hamlet. He's kind of forcing you to, you know, live through these characters. You know, I don't know if I'm explaining that in the right way.
No, well, I think there's different genres, right?
Yeah.
Different eras of theater, and you know, each one is commenting on the one before.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you know, Shakespeare is absolutely responding to the theater of its day and adding to it, or you know, improving upon it, or responding to it, reacting to it. And you would say the same thing for, you know, some of the, you know, you kind of go into like the Commedia dell'arte period, you know, where you have very static actor portrayals. You know, when you were an actor, you were taught to play this actor in this way. You know, you had specific gestures, specific motions, specific ways of speaking, and that's what you learned. You know, and then you start getting, and it usually starts, I think, at the playwright level. You know, where you have playwrights like Anton Chekhov or Henrik Ibsen. You know, writing things like The Doll's House or The Cherry Orchard, and the old way of acting doesn't work with that anymore. And I think so then you have, you know, okay, so now the actors have to catch up to the play that's being written. And so now we start getting into realism, right? Which we're not at naturalism yet, you know, where it has to feel exactly like you just walked into somebody's apartment and now you're dealing with that. You know, that comes later. But even with realism, magical realism, you know, you've got like a little bit of this poetic element that kind of takes you into, but the goal is always, I want to reflect nature, right? I want to reflect what's happening in my world. And so you become more naturalistic throughout the last 100 years, right? So if you were to say, let me ask you that, what makes a good actor? How do you know that somebody's a good actor?
That is interesting. I mean, because I think that is something where it depends on what you're watching. But I mean, I feel like I come more from the film background, like of, you know, watching there. So whenever I'm like watching a film, the way that I know that someone is a good actor is if it's someone who I know I've seen in 1,000 different things, but they aren't that person whenever they are in that.
So they lose themselves, but they're completely believable, right? And
they still somehow incorporate who they are into it. So it's like if you watch like Harrison Ford in Blade Runner, he is Deckard, but like at the same time, he's also all of the other people he's been, but you only think of him as that like one person.
Right, because he's bringing the whole, you know, his whole catalog with him, right? And then you've got personality actors like Jack Nicholson or somebody like that who will, and De Niro, who will always be, you know, always be those guys, right? They're never not going to be that. And you're paying them a lot of money to be that, so they better be. You know, Julia Roberts is always going to have her teeth. You know what I mean? It's like that's just kind of how it has to be. But then you've got the people, the character actors, right? That lose them, the Gary Oldmans and, you know, people like that who are just like phantoms.
Yeah, you can throw any script to them and
Exactly.
they're going to become
exactly.
that person.
And then you've got the classics guys, like you've got the Ian McKellens and the Patrick Stewarts who, understand language and coin a phrase. Maggie Smith, right? Nobody coins the phrase like Maggie Smith did. She could, I don't know, she could pierce you with a word and you're just dead, but that's what we built to in the last 100 years is this cinematic reality, and with the advent of that, it's, you have these moments like, the turn of a door handle, means everything in a scene, and on stage it wouldn't play, I think like back in the day it was how you stood and what postures you took, and it was, I think we're about to, nope, okay. It was, so it was your postures, it was your, how, it was your articulation, your volume, getting out, making sure everybody could hear you, because we didn't have, we didn't have the same level of lighting, we didn't have the same,
technology.
We didn't have amplification, so it was, can you be heard in the back? And that transition to cinema, you think about all those vaudeville people who really just couldn't move because they were too big for cinema, or they didn't look great on screen, so you've just got this morphing of talent that needs to, so now it's how do you look? How intimate can you be? How nuanced can you be in a moment? And for stage actors, you still have to stay big, but they're still looking for nuance. They're still looking for those other things. So it's all about believability. And that's, I think, then you have playwrights like Brecht who fights against that. It's like, I don't want believability. I want to, I'm fighting this realism. I'm saying, no. You want me to just go from my drawing room to your drawing room. I don't want that. I don't want four walls. I want concepts. I want to agitate you. I want to challenge you. And that, I think, is so. Yeah, there's always that.
Yeah, it's almost like the more abstract you're willing to make it, the more like the larger the ideas that you can play with. But at the same time, you kind of at that point lose a little bit of the individualism because you have to pull out so far, I think. But in a certain kind of way. Because I don't know if there is like any sort of way to really like kill that individualism in any sort of genre. But it's like, I think maybe that comes down to the audience's perception, because like, you could watch something like, just a mouth talking on a stage, and that could be, you could that's what you sync up with, or that could be like
you'll never forget that moment,
or you're the woman who's like, oh, thank God it's over.
Yeah, but she'll never forget it.
Yeah, she never will.
She'll never forget it.
That'll always be something she talks about.
Horrible thing I've ever seen in my life. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not for everybody, for sure. But it's its own. It is its own beast. You know. I mean. But yeah, and everybody's, like I say, certain people don't like it. It doesn't appeal to them. They don't want to go see that kind of stuff. I love that kind of theater. Yeah. I always want to go see that kind of theater. Yeah. So
I mean, that's how I am too. And I think like as a creative person, that's kind of the biggest thing that you can have like on your resume is just like I enjoy everything, and even if I don't enjoy everything, like I take something from everything, because you have to be able to take something from everything to be able to know what it is that you're going to make into your voice. I was thinking back while we were talking about these like different eras of actors, this conversation that we had like a long time ago during 12th Night about Marlon Brando in On the Waterfront.
Absolutely.
Where the scene with the glove, because I remember watching that, and I think whenever I first watched it, I didn't really get it, but then like as I thought about it more and just kind of sat with it more, he is so attached to these emotions that like this glove is holding in this scene, and it just is, in a way, it's kind of like this move forward in cinema where it's like moving from those old style films where it's like talking in the crazy accents and like that no one actually ever spoke in, to more of this like, we're going to sit with these characters, we're going to follow these characters around,
Yeah, we're going to let them have a full life, you know, and that goes back to, again, we act every day. Every moment is a scene. This is a scene. We're in a scene right now.
Yeah, we are.
And but there are multiple things happening in our lives at the same time. You know, you're checking levels on the computer. I'm thirsty. I take a drink. You know, so it's not just what's prescribed and here's the text and the subtext and our goals and objectives. We have additional life outside of that, and I think that is. And so the first scene where you see a character's interior monologue that varies from the action that's happening in that moment. So you have two scenes happening side by side being played by one character. And that's where you see true life on stage, right? Or in this case on film. And he picks up the glove. I think even Marie Saint thinks that they're going to cut or she doesn't know what's going to happen. She wants her glove back. It was an accidental drop of the glove. He picks it up. He doesn't give it back to her because it's soft and because it's warm and something he hasn't had in a long time. And then to feel he just said, I just wanted to put her glove on. I just wanted it in that moment. And the best thing Elia Kazan did in that is not cut. You know, he's like, no, play it out, right? Because that is truly what, you know, kind of the Stanislavski principle is there, which is let your character live, you know, have goals, have relationships, understand what those things are, you know, have strategies and tactics and, you know, text, subtext, interior monologues, moments of evaluation, you know, where you say, I don't know what's next, allowing your character to think of something in the moment, even if it's already been prescribed. You've done it 20 million times, but that's still an authentic moment of evaluation that you have to hit night after night after night. And that's, that's part of telling the story, right? Is that your character has to think it through. And so you allow yourself to do that.
And I think that is one of the, like, kind of, even back to what we started this off with, was I think that that's the sign of a good director, a good actor, and a good atmosphere that they've kind of created between each other, where the director trusts the actor and the actor trusts the atmosphere and who he's being led by, that he can just like in that moment, like I think the way that I look at that is like that wasn't even Marlon Brando at that point. That was him. That was his character. So like the moment that, I'm not sure how much of that part was scripted and when it went off script because I haven't read the original script, but I imagine that most of that was just he became his character in that moment.
Yeah, I mean, the main action of that scene was the same.
Yeah.
Right? He just picked up her glove and didn't give it back to her. That's the only difference. And then he put the glove on. That wasn't in the script. That was just what he wanted to do in the moment. But the rest of the scene plays on. And that's where you say, oh, okay, there's two, you know, you've got the main action of the scene, which is him walking her home and her accepting that. And then this moment with the glove. And then she takes it back, you know, because she's just like, oh my gosh, I've ruined the scene. When really it was...
Yeah. And then that became
so much more.
That enhanced the story so much more. And
so much.
I think that I've always found it funny whenever, I mean, you even said this earlier, when people say like that they're infected, that they got infected by the bug of theater. And it's this joke where it's like, you know, we get into this because we kind of like catch this, like, you know, this little it's like the cough of theater, like we catch this and then it's like
right.
you can't let go of it, but at the same time it's like
doesn't let up.
That's what leads to the best moments, is like you kind of get infected by this like train that's moving throughout this story. You know, it's like you jump on and it's like you, at a certain point, you don't really even have to think about what you're doing, and it just starts happening. You just kind of start living through it. I mean, because I'm like by no means someone who's, you know, done a lot of acting really at all. I mean, maybe I've said a couple lines on stage in general, but I know, like, you know, from the time in 12th Night, that the times that I really felt like I was doing the best thing that I could be doing for those scenes was whenever I was just there and I wasn't like, I'm not Caleb sitting in this costume playing the guitar in the background. Like, I'm just, you know, whatever my character is. And I remember that being one of the exercises that you had us do, where it was like, walk like your character would walk. And you know, I don't think I appreciated that at the time, but like thinking back on that, it's like, yeah, you have to walk like your character would walk, because whenever you are your character, if you're going to be doing it well, you aren't going to be doing things the way that you normally do it, because you've completely let yourself become that.
Right, and you have to experiment with it. You know, I mean, I think the walking exercise is a good one, you know, where you just kind of have everybody's walking about the stage, and, you know, you kind of set parameters there, and then you encourage them to, like, okay, what happens when you know, lead with your feet, or when you lead with your shoulders, or you lead with your chest out, or, you know, and how does that impact And because you do, we all have little idiosyncrasies that are reflective of our personalities, right? And so the way we sit, the way we chew our food, the way we walk, the way we do the most basic human things, we read that on other people. I mean, that's kind of part of our evolution, right? Is that we constantly evaluate others, right? And say, is this person like me? Is this person different from me? How is this person different? Do I like this? Do I not like this? This is strange. This is familiar. This is that, and it's all part of that, that response to, and that need to be like with like, or similar with similar, and so you find groups of, friends who act similarly or at least complement each other if they, and how big can you make your world? And I think that's an actor's job, is to make their world as big as you possibly can. The best actors don't live in the theater, right? They have to go out and live life and experience the world and talk to people and, constantly just absorb and sponge every little element, like, and not that I'm like actively being like, oh, I'm gonna steal this person's little idiosyncrasy for my, for this. But I will say, like, as you're getting to know your character, you think like, gosh, this person reminds me of this person, and this person has elements of different people that I know and that I've met and experienced, and maybe I pull a little bit of this from someone or from someone else as I try to build this complete person that get, and being inspired by people you've met on the street or that you've become friendly with or whatever.
That actually makes me think back to a quote that I had just read, like even just a couple hours before we started this. I think the person who said its name was Henri Matisse, and it's I am everything that I have experienced in the past, and it's like that's who you become in that moment. It's like you just are kind of displaying everything that you've absorbed, and
Exactly.
that's where it goes.
Exactly, and you absorb human experience. I think that's why, being empathic is an essential part of being an actor, is because you have to absorb that emotion and you have to hold it and hold it as sacred, so that you can share it when it's necessary.
So kind of because I think that kind of brings us to a good spot that we can start to wrap it up. I have a question that I kind of ask a variant of to all of my guests on the show at the end. How would you, looking back on everything that you've done, like with theater and with all the other things that you've done as well, how would you say that your chasing of your passion throughout all of your careers has changed you?
Oh man, so I don't know if it's changed me as much as it has built me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, I myself am, I guess I've always been like this, but I'm kind of a shell, right? Like, I am a shell, and I fill myself up with theater is one thing, but my family, my friendships, my work, I guess what it's taught me to do is to stay open, stay vulnerable, to not be afraid to be myself in a moment, to be strong in a moment, or to be vulnerable in a moment, to be honest with myself and with others. I mean, I have learned the value of that because of theater, for sure. But I think it that's always been there, if that makes sense. Like, I'm non-judgmental. I try to be non-judgmental, I'll say it that way, but there's no space for that in my life. I meet people where they are, and that's, those are the lessons that the theater teaches you, for sure. But I think it's always also been kind of in my nature, which is why I mesh with it so well. It's very much my medium, because it's communal. I I can't go and do theater by myself,
Yeah.
right? I can go work on my lines by myself, but that's not theater. I need at least one other person to be in the space with me. And I've done very intimate theater. I've done shows for an audience of 4, which is never what you want. You always want like a nice big room. But sometimes you look up and you enter the stage and you say, it's 4 people tonight, and that's good. It's
Yeah.
what I needed. That's what they need. So and even then, whether it's like really super well attended or, and I've been in shows, sold out shows for 1,200. I've been in, not sold out shows with 4. But I always think to myself, who needs to see this show will see it, right? Who needs to experience this and I do that for myself. What do I need to experience, and what will fill me up, and hopefully it resonates with other people, and usually it does, which is, I'm blessed for that. But so I guess that's a very long answer for that. I apologize, but
Long answers are the best thing for podcasts.
yeah, well, that's true. So so that is, it hasn't changed me. It's made me who I am, though.
Yeah, I like that because I do feel similarly, like with all the things, like especially with writing, because that's where I see myself the most clearly through, where it's not that I was someone else before I found out about writing, but it was like whenever I found out that this was something that I could do, I was like, well, thank God, because it's like now I have the thing that I can be my most true self through.
Yeah.
And it's like that's where I always, I say jokingly to people, but I really mean it honestly. It's like I'm very bad at expressing myself through words. It's like always just something that I've not been good at, but I'm good at expressing myself through written word, and it's like that's my
Right.
thing. And so it's like with you, it's through expressing yourself through a character, through this thing, through this thing that you're embodying. And yeah, I think that's the coolest kind of through line that I've found from talking to all different kinds of creative people is, that we all find our, our bug that catches us, and,
What makes you whole?
yeah.
What makes you better than you were the day before? And that's, each one of us is, for my husband, it's music. My daughter is the same. Like she has a bad day, she goes and plays guitar. She has a good day, she goes and plays guitar. It's just what she does. My other daughter draws. She draws all the time. She draws on everything she can possibly draw on. She draws on, but that's it. It's what completes her, and so that's always really, and for me, it's this, time-consuming, life-draining.
4 black walls.
Put me in a black wall, and in 4 black walls, and we'll make something magical happen.
Yeah. And then you pull back the curtains and you get to be part of the
And then I
the
leave
show
and
with
I
them
never
and
look at it again.
Yeah.
Actually, it's really funny, not to keep talking, but we've been cleaning out some old things, and my husband found VHS tapes to date
Oh, I
me.
love VHS tapes.
But of my grad school thesis show, another play I was in grad school called Lord of the Flies that was really great, and there was another one. There was like my one-person show that I did when I was in grad school, and it was just like, wow. And he's like, we need to watch these, and I was like, you can watch them.
Yeah.
I'm done. I've put it to bed. And that's the other great thing about, live theater anyway, is it's temporal, right? It doesn't, like, She Kills Monsters just closed on Sunday. It's Monday, and I'm here rehearsing my next show.
Yeah.
And you say goodbye to it.
And if you do find a way to, watch it again, it's like it doesn't seem to hold the same thing that it held the first
Yeah,
time.
it's the
But at the same
magic.
time, you are reminded of all the things that it does hold, and you're like,
Right.
why isn't this camera able to catch what it
Yeah.
was that I felt during that?
Yeah.
Because I feel like that watching, Twelfth Night especially. I mean, I think that one holds up the strongest through that kind of like compression of going onto a video. But watching anything like that I was a part of or that I did whenever I was in school or even now, I'm like, I don't know how this couldn't capture the moment here.
Yeah.
And it's
Well, because we're sharing it together, right? And that's, the audience is there, the actors are there, the stage crew is there. It's live, it's in the moment, it's being experienced for the first and the last time, every single time. It's a quiche, right? It's only going to taste good when it comes out. Or souffle, Anyway.
Or pizza. You can't let that get cold.
No,
Well,
right?
sometimes,
Like
but
nothing.
not the
Yeah,
good
I mean,
stuff.
cold pizza, it's its own thing.
Yeah, that becomes its own new monster.
Exactly.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Davis, for coming onto my podcast.
Thank
This
you.
was a great conversation. I'm glad we got to have it because, I'm like I said, whenever I started this out, I was like, she needs to be one of the first people I get on because
I'm so excited.
definitely with, with our time in 12th Night especially, that was like a big kind of turning point into like me
You did
wanting
so
to-
good with that, too.
Thank you.
Like, it was great. And I mean, I think that's, again, too, one of the, you brought, so by being part of it,
Yeah.
the show was better, right? And that's what I always try to tell, like when we're working on a show, I don't like saying no. I want to try it, right? Because it might not be the right answer, but it's going to take you to the right answer somewhere else, but why be there if you're not going to contribute to it, or if I'm not going to allow someone else to contribute? Everybody needs to put into the pool, right? And then we're going to have a really great time, and it's going to be an amazing show because we all built it together. That was my, and that was, I think, a great takeaway for the last show we did, especially because it really was everybody kicking in, everybody working together and stopping and trying to give options, and like let's really try to build this together.
Yeah,
So,
let's see what we can dig up
Yeah.
out of here.
exactly.
Yeah, it's like that. It's like the old. I think I think it was shown to not be a real quote, but the one from Michelangelo where it's like, whenever I sculpt, I'm digging out the thing that was in the marble the whole time.
Yeah.
And it's like it's always down there. You just need to put in the work to do it.
Go figure it out.
Well, thank you again for coming on the show.
Thank you.
And,
Appreciate the time.
yeah, maybe we'll have an episode 2 at some point.
Anytime.
Yeah, I always like to do
Anytime.
follow-ups.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening to this episode. I loved getting to sit down and talk for this episode. She's been a big inspiration on my creative life. I brought it up a lot of times throughout the episode, but my time, in high school in the last couple years doing theater there has been very inspirational for me, and it's been a very big milestone in my life. And so I wanted to highlight that with this episode, and I hope that a little bit of my enjoyment came through the microphone and into your ears. I was I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember I was having a bit of a hard time during this episode expressing some of my different thoughts I was having. I was kind of getting stuck up on my words, and so, but it all worked out perfectly in the end. She always figured out what I was trying to say somehow. I don't know how, because I couldn't even figure it out. But thank you for listening to this episode, and I want to leave you with some words that were said near the end of this episode. It might not be the right answer, but it's going to take you to the right answer somewhere else. All right, guys, thanks for listening to this episode, and I will see you 2 weeks from now. Bye.